Today is Wednesday, the 25th of October, 2017, and it is block height 491,739. Welcome to another episode of Block Digest with Shinobi Monkey.
Hey, everybody.
Coming live from the jungle. No one knows where. He's anonymous, of course, obviously. Rick, slightly less anonymous. How are you doing?
Yeah. Oh, man, I'm doing well. I was telling her earlier, man, the weather just get beautiful up. It's like summer here. End of October, summer. It's amazing. I went out and enjoyed it for a little bit.
It's usually British people that talk about the weather, but I love it when you introduce the concept. That's great. Janine, who's in the same room as me. Let's sync our mics up. Go, go.
Yep. Hi, everybody. And also, we had a similar situation with the weather in Berlin because it was unusually warm when we were there. It's very strange. Very little rain, very warm. But then it turned back to rain in the last few days.
We got out just in time, and we got there for the late summer that they had in that autumn time. It was very, very cool. Aknix from the Bitcoin bus. What's the weather report?
It's getting a little chilly. Not bad, though.
A little chilly. All right, cool. So we got sunshine with Rick, got a little chilly with Aknix. But how's the weather in Bitcoin land? You like that segue? You like what I did there?
Cloudy.
Let's go. Is it cloudy? It's a little bit confusing, though, isn't it? When people keep
It's almost like a fog.
Yeah, a fog of confusion. We didn't even script this. Come on. Why? Okay, so this is here's an announcement from Coinbase dated today. It's clarification on the upcoming you-know-what 2x fork thing. And they make it quite clear that we are going to call the chain with the most accumulated difficulty Bitcoin. Should be a comma there, shouldn't it?
So to clarify, they mean the exact opposite of what they said last time.
Right. But this is the statement they made on the 23rd, 2 days ago, where it's timeline to support Bitcoin Segwit 2x and Bitcoin Gold, where they made clear that there would be two coins. There would be the Bitcoin and there would be the Bitcoin 2x token, right? And so here's the timeline, and they're laying out the timeline. Here's the fork. And then within 24 hours of the fork, customers will be able to buy and sell both Bitcoin and Bitcoin 2x. You see that? You see how they're two distinct things, and we've got two different names. And then approximately 24 to 48 hours post-fork, they say, once we have ensured the blockchains are stable, Coinbase will re-enable Bitcoin and Bitcoin 2x, you see how those two distinct things, to send and receive. So please be careful when sending funds, etc. So why this now? What happened in those 2 days? Were they put under pressure? Were they told, okay, you're not towing the party line?
Called them and told them it's noted time.
It's backroom time. Backroom Barry.
Yeah, because it was really unfortunate to see it go back to this most accumulated difficulty thing. I really felt like, I felt so good yesterday to see them make that statement, and I was just like, yes, okay, we've got a clear perspective of what Coinbase is going to do. And then, I was almost even going to joke that Gemini was going with this old narrative now of most accumulated difficulty, and they went right back to it. It's real upsetting, and it's definitely what's causing all the cloudy, foggy weather around Bitcoin.
Do you want to say any more about it?
It boggles my mind. Like I'm going to throw a conspiracy out there right now. I'm starting to get the feeling that some of the bigger players in the 2x agreement signed a legally binding contract, because I cannot really think of any explanation that aligns with a rational thought process in their head. If they did not sign some kind of legally binding agreement, then the kind of flip-flopping Coinbase just did makes absolutely no sense.
Are you saying saying Barry had a backdoor?
I mean, potentially. I mean, it's like, what else makes sense? And if they were to have, or if they did sign a legally binding agreement to do something like list the 2x fork as Bitcoin, I really hope they didn't, because that would be a criminal conspiracy to commit consumer fraud And on top of being open to a class action lawsuit for consumer fraud, if they were to try to call the 2x fork Bitcoin, that would actually open them up to a case for criminal conspiracy. And I really hope that the people running the big companies in this space are not so supremely fucking stupid that they would actively record a criminal conspiracy like that with a legally binding contract. That would just be a whole new level of stupid.
Well, it would only become criminal. It would only become criminal once they actually started selling the tokens and potentially misrepresenting them as something that they're not, right?
Well, see, but that's the thing. If they signed an agreement stating they would do so, it doesn't matter whether or not they actually wind up doing it. That's still a conspiracy to commit a criminal act.
Yeah, we need to get a lawyer on to clarify that, although they'll probably just say, oh, but because of this and caveat this and caveat that, and then they probably just won't say anything because they won't want to commit to it. I'm not sure that it is as straightforward as that, the way you're explaining it. I think them just agreeing to try and get miners on board isn't automatically conspiracy to commit fraud.
Oh, well, yeah, if it was just a legally binding agreement to attempt to follow through, then that wouldn't be anything criminal. But if it was like a black and white condition, like we will list 2x as Bitcoin, then that would constitute it.
Yeah, okay. What you're saying is that they're legally bound to put out this statement about accumulated difficulty. That's what they've all agreed to. And then the task, get as much hashing power onto that chain as possible.
Well, I mean, that could be another possibility, but I'm mostly thinking like it's the whole thing is speculation on my part anyway, but I just like it. You are like a hair's breadth away from a criminal conspiracy if they actually signed a legally binding document to do something like that.
Yeah. So let me put this to you, Monkey, before we go on to the Ledger X thing. Let's say every single person agreed with NYA, right? It happened. Nobody disagreed with it. They thought it was, a good thing. And now we're here where we are. We're about to attempt this hard fork. And some malicious miner comes along and manages to attack the network and get most of the difficulty on a different chain, maybe the legacy chain. What would they say is the real Bitcoin in that case, if they're being intellectually honest? Is the one that the community supported because everyone was behind the NYA the true Bitcoin, or is the one with the most difficulty because someone managed to perform an attack on the network? Is that the one?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, like the second you hard fork, regardless of the consensus, like that's not Bitcoin. Like the minute you break backwards compatibility with all previous chains, in my mind, that is no longer Bitcoin.
Right,
now, whether or not everybody,
that's a human decision. Someone has to make that decision. It's not in the protocol or in the code, is it?
No, but it's like, what it comes down to is Bitcoin is a distinct thing, and legally, like that has to be considered its own distinct thing. Now, the labels aside. Like if everybody were to move over to a hard fork and continue using that and nobody remained on Bitcoin, like that's one thing. There's nothing really contentious there. We've moved on to something else. Like there is no chaos in the process and we're all using something else now. And whether people might want to refer to that as Bitcoin, but as far as legally speaking, I believe that once you break that compatibility with a hard fork, that's no longer Bitcoin. Like, I do not think that it would be legally appropriate,
right,
or ethically
my
appropriate.
Point is, who gets to decide which is Bitcoin? Who gets to call it? Because the way I see it, anyone can call anything they want, right? They could, I could call the Litecoin blockchain Bitcoin if I wanted. No one would believe me, but maybe if I run, a massive exchange doing hundreds of millions of dollars of, turnover, then maybe I get to have a say. Because then all the customers will just take it that I'm an authority because I'm a huge exchange. My point is that no one really gets this. So there's nothing in the protocol that helps us define which one is the official chain. Nothing in the white paper. I didn't see anything on the Nakamoto Institute website, any of the literature early on and, up to about 2013. I didn't see anything about.
No, and that's why Like that's how I arrived at like what I define Bitcoin, or how I define Bitcoin, because there is no way to do that except relatively. And when you have something break away from what is now Bitcoin, something that nobody contests right now, what is Bitcoin? They're contesting what is Bitcoin relative to a thing that's going to break away from it. And that's where I arrive at my definition. If you are defining something relative to the thing you're breaking away, well, then how can you be that thing you're breaking away from?
Okay, I mean, I don't disagree with you. But I'm thinking slightly differently to you. The only thing the protocols, the argument that these companies, Gemini and Coinbase, are making is that there is something at the protocol level that helps us to establish which chain will be the Bitcoin. And they're using that, they're lending that as credibility for their attempt to say, okay, from now on, this ticker symbol BTC will apply to this chain and not this other one. But their claim comes from this feature in Bitcoin of the longest proof of work chain, as it was stated in the white paper, that we now call accumulated difficulty, the one that has the most work. But my issue is that this never is addressed at the protocol level. I don't believe there's anything in the Bitcoin code that makes claims about it being the official Bitcoin. I think all that we have is a database of claims that are verifiable using the public key infrastructure that's implemented. That's all the blockchain data will do for you. It won't tell you which blockchain it is. It won't tell you that it's Bitcoin. It'll just tell you which keys signed which inputs, and here are all the unspent outputs currently at the latest block height. It doesn't tell you anything else. It's up to us to decide what we call this chain or what we call that chain. So this idea that it's like in the protocol, like this is a non-brainer, it's the longest cumulative difficulty. Regardless, don't even get into issues about when do you decide the cutoff period. Like, is it 48 hours, 76 hours? What if the hashing power goes back to the other chain and you've already renamed it? Never mind all that fiasco. I just don't think that that argument has any logical consistency, because like I say, if everyone agreed with the NYA and an attacker came along and managed to pull off this cumulative difficulty, they would still say that their chain is the Bitcoin chain, wouldn't they?
Oh yeah, well yeah, in that sense, like it's not an argument; it's a rationalization to attempt to justify what they want to do. And it, like, yeah, like you said, there's no consistency at all. Otherwise, hey, if miners decide to blacklist coins and that's the longest chain, well, that's Bitcoin. If they decide to change the inflation schedule and it's the longest chain, well, that's Bitcoin. And that's just it's nonsense. Like that completely fails to grasp the social dynamic of a system like this. Like the biggest thing in this debate that I think I've taken away from it, looking at everybody else, is everybody tries to slice Bitcoin into different abstractions, like the economic aspects of Bitcoin, or the social aspects of Bitcoin, or the technical aspects. But you can't do that. Like, it's all of those things tangled together is Bitcoin. And when you start trying to dissect it like that, you're never going to get anywhere. It's like how physicists dissect the physical nature of the world. Like, we went from like molecules to atoms to now looking at the subatomic particles of atoms. Okay, well, what comes after that? After that? After that? You can just do that infinitely, and it doesn't really get you anywhere as far as understanding the totality of what's going on unless you incorporate all of that. Subatomic particles and how they interact isn't going to tell you anything about how your engine in your car works, because you need to take into account all of the layers of that to really appreciate what's going on. And I feel like, just when people are doing that, to me, that shows they don't really understand Bitcoin, because they're just trying to chop off one little piece and look at that piece in isolation, because they can't really grasp how all the different pieces interrelate. My favorite academic piece of literature of this century.
Right. So after section 4, where he talks about proof of work, and I'll just go over it briefly. This is the Bitcoin white paper by somebody called Satoshi Nakamoto, and it was published in 2008. And So here we are in section 4, which defines Adams-Back's hash cache in order to establish this timestamp of events. So essentially, a blockchain is something called a linked list, which records the sequence of activities by timestamping them, right? Just putting all the activities, in this case, transactions being sent, on the network in a sequence. The question is, how do we prove that this sequence is the correct sequence, that this corresponds to the truth, right? And in philosophy, this is called verificationalism, which is the idea that truth is repetition, right? It is what we can verify that it is. But in this case, Satoshi is going to make the claim that we can establish which sequence of activities is true based on the amount of proof of work that's done. And proof of work is a thermodynamic endeavor that's carried out by one's computer. Back in these days, when he's talking about CPUs. Nowadays, we talk about ASIC chips actually doing the work. But this is a thermodynamic process. And as a result, it can't be undone. The energy expended cannot be reversed, and it produces an easily verifiable cryptographic claim that can be verified by anyone. You can send it out. Very hard to produce, but costly to produce, but trivial to verify once you've done it, once you've produced this nonce, okay? Now, he doesn't address here the issue of like what would happen, if the network forked and two groups of people claimed legitimacy on both, or on each one. All he's talking about is how, allocating it to IP addresses wouldn't work, and therefore he says it should be the longest chain, right? The majority decision is represented by the longest chain, which has the greatest proof of work effort invested in it. But the context here is he's talking about the sequence of transactions on the network. He's not talking about changing the fundamental rules. He's only talking about we accept the chain that's the longest chain in the sense that we accept that these transactions are real. And then later on in section 6, he will go on to talk about the incentives. And this is the paragraph I think you should pay most attention to. Let me read it to you. The incentive may help encourage nodes to stay honest. If a greedy attacker is able to assemble more CPU power than all the honest nodes, he would have to choose between using it to defraud people by stealing back his payments or by using it to generate new coins. He ought to find it more profitable to play by the rules, such rules that favor him, with more new coins than everyone else combined, than to undermine the system and the validity of his own wealth, right? So here you'll notice he uses the word may, uses the word ought. This is a very intelligent guy. He's not being categorical because he knows the limits of his own knowledge. He understands that he doesn't know quite yet how people are going to behave. Now let me draw your attention to this word here, payments, stealing back payments. And look at how he uses the word rules. He uses the word rules twice, very close together in the same sentence. So the context here is the longest proof of work refers to the stealing of payments and basically defrauding people in the sense that you're trying to pervert the sequence of activities on the chain, on the network. So he's only talking about it in the sense, in a confined environment where we're just talking about transactions. Now, when he talks about he ought to find it more profitable to play by the rules, he doesn't say whose rules. There's an assumption.
And real quick, Chris,
yeah.
if you want to jump up to section 11, I think the first paragraph that also kind of feeds into this point too.
Okay. So the assumption. Let me finish my point. The assumption here is that he knows what the rules are already, right? So I think quite clearly this doesn't apply to establishing a new set of rules. Right. So let me jump to section 11. Was that clear? Did I make that point?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the definitions in the early works of Satoshi and also other collaborators on the forum were mostly thinking about, in fact, all they were really thinking about was securing that sequence of activities recorded in the blockchain. They weren't talking about, well, what happens if you come up with a different set of rules? So draw my attention then to which part do you want me to?
The first paragraph here. We consider the scenario of an attacker trying to generate an alternative chain faster than the honest chain. even if this is accomplished, it does not throw the system open to arbitrary changes, such as creating value out of thin air or taking money that never belonged to another. So in other words, like even if a chain is longer, they still have to build it within the rule set for it to be accepted. Otherwise, it's just going to be ignored by the nodes.
Yeah, that's very good. I think we've done it. We've nailed it. Great.
And it goes to show, like, Coinbase's definition is just ridiculous. Like, and it's, yeah.
Yeah. So James Bond, what does this have to do with Coinbase change of heart? Well, what it has to do with is that they're using this arbitrary rule. They're making a claim that somehow in the protocol, it said that the longest chain or the most accumulated difficulty is the Bitcoin. And no such claim is made. We refuted it. We've cited it. I read into the white paper Satoshi gave. We find no evidence to suggest that the longest chain, whenever you draw the line and say, well, at this point, we're going to define it. This was not at the protocol level. It's a human discretionary measure that you have to take. It's a matter of just like somebody going, okay, I think this one should be the one. Not something you can address in the protocol tool. All right, so Ledger X. What do you want to say about that?
They've finally put together a policy on hard forks, and I actually think this is a pretty reasonable one, even though I obviously would have hoped they would just kind of get rid of fork support, period. But they're essentially saying that they're going to address each fork on a fork by fork basis. And the reason they're taking this stance on everything is because obviously, I'm sure you know, Chris, the technical complications of actually getting all the software to support that together, making sure that it's up to the security standards. But they've also gone a little into reasoning about the market structure of supporting forks like this. And obviously, like, Ledger X was a product and a service created for people who want to actually play by the regulatory rules. And so another aspect of their concerns is, even if they can deal with the technical issues, get support put together, and deliver these derivative assets to their clients, where can they go deal with this? Like, what markets are offering liquidity or a place to trade it? And one of their concerns there was some of these forks, because anybody can do this at any time, might only be tradable in very seedy exchanges, in my own words, like without any kind of regulatory framework in random parts of the world. And so that's another aspect of their concern. And again, I kind of wish they went further, but they're effectively, you know, taking the technical risks, the regulatory risks, and then obviously the time periods of both of those things. Like, would they be able to actually deliver a forked asset in enough time for their customers to actually, you know, put that on a market someplace and get the market value for it? Or would they constantly be lagging behind and pretty much just, like, I mean, like, do what Coinbase is going to end up doing with Bcash? By the time anybody actually gets that, it's pretty much worthless. And so, yeah, they're not taking the kind of foolhardy stance of, here's an absolute interpretation on how we're going to deal with this fork. They're going to assess each one on a case-by-case basis. And, you know, it is what it is, but it's a lot more responsible, I think, than a policy they could have set.
Yeah, I just highlighted here. You can see the points point by point. You can also follow along in the description below this video if you want to see the material that we're talking about for yourself. We didn't include the white paper, but you can just use your favorite search engine, Bitcoin white paper, or come straight up. Cool, cool. You can also join us in the Mumble as well during the day, because we have the whole news desk. Community gets involved, submit stories. You can do that as well. So what is up next? Oh, you see, okay, so we have more Segwit 2x stuff. This time we have a series of announcements from various communities, and this one is coming from Unocoin, which I've never even heard of. Who's this? Who's going to take the story?
It's an Indian exchange, but effectively this is the complete inversion of what Coinbase just did. Coinbase said that Bitcoin is Bitcoin and then completely flip-flopped on that. And Uno Coin essentially had a stance like Coinbase is right now. But they've I think if you scroll a little bit further down, that you can see the update. But they're going to be listing Bitcoin as Bitcoin. And I do believe they said they won't be supporting 2x at first, if they even do, though they will allow their customers to withdraw them. So I guess it's kind of a give and take that left us at net zero as far as exchange positions go.
Yeah. And there's an interesting conversation on the chat as well. You have Stop and Decrypt, who's talking to Beauty Bubble. He says that nodes maintain consensus within the current rule set based on the most cumulative work. So in other words, like all the nodes on the network, your node, you choose what software you run. Therefore, you're choosing what rules you will be validating on the network. And then he quotes Gregory Maxwell, and he says, nodes prefer the first seen valid chain with the most work measured in terms equivalent to the sum of the difficulty of all blocks, not the longest chain. Yeah, so it's not just the block height, in other words, because you can just drop your difficulty and get a higher number on the block height, but that doesn't mean that you put in the most work. So I thought that was a good little conversation there. And we have another community stating their stance about SegWit2x, Israeli Bitcoin Association.
Yeah, that's right. You know, getting a little bit of back and forth on these statements where you get something for 2x and then something against 2x. And, you know, basically this is just logic, again, coming saying that they believe that Bitcoin is what you choose to be. Here, let me pull up my actual notes, what they said. Israel believes that Bitcoin is voluntary money. Therefore, when we use the term Bitcoin unqualified to refer to a specific currency, or when we use the currency codes BTC or XBT, we will necessarily mean the currency based on the current Bitcoin protocol as referred to in Bitcoin Core version 0.15. So it's just a statement saying that the Israeli Bitcoin community supports the current implementation of Bitcoin and defines that as Bitcoin. It's, you know, got to go around the echo chamber to see who's calling what Bitcoin nowadays.
And we have another statement. They're all coming thick and fast, aren't they? This one is from Hong Kong, Bitcoin HK.
Yeah, that's correct. This one from Hong Kong is also from another community. They say that, you know, just in the more logic, saying, you know, SegWit2x doesn't include strong replay protection, nor does it have widespread consensus across the community. So therefore, they do not support this hard fork. And yeah, so another one against 2x.
Coming in thick and fast, thick and fast. And then this one as well. This is a French one. We, the members of the French-speaking Bitcoin communities, want to make our voice heard regarding the opposition to SegWit2x hard fork scheduled next November. Wow. So these were these all timed to come out on the same day or what?
Not to my knowledge.
All right.
Yeah, these are all local communities coming together, like from their meetups, it seems like.
Right. Okay. Okay. All good. All good. What's Jeff saying? What's old Jeffy boy up to? He just, oh, this is a tweet from 26th of August, 2014. I love a blast from the past. I love going back through. Do you know what? I'm a big fan of Jeff Garzik's early work, I have to say. I really liked his early stuff. Wasn't so sure when he sort of started to sell out a little bit and went all commercial. But this quote, he's just learned a new term from the altcoin world, ICO, initial coin offering. In my opinion, signaling the dump of pump and dump. And he's high tweeting C million there. So that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty comical thing on Twitter. I figured I'd pull it into the news desk for sure.
Well, I wish Jeff good luck with his 1,000-year cryptocurrency ICO that he's launching. And I hope this won't be signaling the dump of the pump and dump, Jeff. And Jeff's been busy today. He's been writing on the SegWit2x status update. It's full steam ahead. He's still going. He hasn't left to do an ICO. He's still working on this. He'll do the ICO in his part-time. This guy's like a machine. He never sleeps.
I mean, it's really quite straightforward. Like the TLDR is, I mean, come on, guys, we have to push this contentious fork through, or how else can I justify Metronome existing?
Yeah. This guy is going to bro down like nobody in the community. This guy is going to get the best bro down. He is working so hard, very hard.
Well, you know what I did notice in this conversation discussion on Twitter, I saw some people talking back and forth how it's based on the 0.14 code, and that breaking Bitcoin bug is still not fixed in this implementation. The one that everybody saw that caused a little bit of controversy. Not too much hard work going into it.
But that's Core's bug. That's not his bug. That's Core's.
Right.
No, it's not his fault, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Bitcoin Gold, because I was always under the impression that Litecoin was the silver to Bitcoin's gold, but now there is actually a Bitcoin Gold. So is Litecoin still the silver, or do we now need a Bitcoin silver? How's this going to work?
I've already heard the B silver's on the way. You know, we got B10, B Mercury. We're going to go through all the table of elements with the B in front of it now.
Okay, that's a good idea. We should just create like rhodium, maybe Bitcoin rhodium and selenium and all of them. All right, so this is the joke that is Bitcoin Gold, which frankly is a fucking mess. And this is the mess of the pull request or issue actually about implementing replay protection. Look at this shit. Look at this. People posting memes on a repo. On a Git repo, really? Like, the fuck is this shit? And it just, like reading this was just painful. They don't even know how to implement it on their own chain. The developers, they had to put out a bounty for it.
Just be nice, Chris. You know, Bcash forked with just 2 people, and they didn't even ask for help. At least they're asking for help.
Credit to them. This is a scam. That website claims repo protection has already been implemented. I mean, it's just mostly people calling them scammers, asking like, is there any news on this? This was 2 days ago. Bitcoin Gold is not launching today. They're calling it a fork. It was really a snapshot. Oh, God, look at this. And this is Starbuck BG. He's one of the devs. And yeah, he's like, he doesn't like people spamming, you know, telling the truth with their memes. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you see the issue still hasn't been resolved. It still sort of ends with, you know, like, let's talk about it more. So they've got really, they set themselves a deadline of the 1st of November. Hopefully they will have it done by then. For now, I think you just get a test net, right? That's all you're getting.
I guess, you know, it's like so confusing, really. Like, you know, the snapshot and the way that they'll be distributed, where they'll be distributed. It's not, such a headache. I mean, like, it's not worth it. I don't have enough in Bitcoin anyway for it to be anything relevant. It's not worth the risk. It's just such a headache. I can't wait to get past these things.
Yeah, but we did see a lot of traders, you know, try to manipulate, and, you know, they thought they could, you know, go long and get more of these free gold coins, and then the price dumped, and now a bunch of people stuck in their long positions because the price has gone down. They didn't close immediately afterwards. So I think it does have an effect on the market, but it may have a diminishing effect as time goes on and people start to get bored of all these forks. It just, you know.
That's it. I hope one day we'll come to a, you know, no fork implementation or something where there's no forks. So I don't know how it's going to be done, but we need to get past this.
Yeah, indeed. All right. So, breaking. Senate votes to nullify rule letting consumers band together to sue banks or credit card companies. I think this is Janine's story.
Yep. So the gist of this, the history behind this tweet, was that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in the US announced in July of this year that they wanted to ban mandatory arbitration clauses. So actually, if you read that tweet, it's a little confusing because you think that they're banning class action lawsuits, but actually what the rule was that the vote was taking, that the rule was, or the vote was related to, was a rule about banning mandatory arbitration clauses, not specifically class action lawsuits. And if you don't know what that is in legal terms, you can take a look back at some of our past videos where I covered the Equifax data breach story, which will help you, because for a while Equifax was including a clause in their identity protection services that anyone who signed up would be giving up their right to pursue a class action lawsuit. So it's a similar thing that they were imposing a mandatory arbitration clause. And it was in the small print, and probably very few people read it, but enough people read it that it made big news, and eventually Equifax got rid of it, and so I don't think it's in effect anymore. The CFPB proposed this rule to ban mandatory arbitration clauses like several months prior to the Equifax stuff. So that did not affect their decision, but no doubt that was on everyone's minds when this vote came forward in the Senate. And interestingly, the result of the vote was a near tie, 51-50, in favor of a rollback of the ban. So it's no longer the ban on mandatory arbitration clauses will not be going through. And the tiebreaker vote was coming from, you guessed it, Mike Pence. Unfortunately, this story is being framed as the free market loving Republicans are to blame story, which I find disgusting because Democrats are far from being angels on this issue, and the idea that anything with regards to this entire banking system is a free market is laughable at best. I personally think this story is illuminating for two reasons. One, anyone who still believes in the notion that the traditional banking system is held to a greater standard in terms of consumer protection is really skating on thin ice, if that ice wasn't already broken after the 2008 financial crash. I also find it hilarious that, in the midst of all this fork discussion, there's all these cryptocurrency exchanges like Coinbase and even Bitfinex, which are often effectively banks in themselves, and they're listing these fork coins based on a fear that their customers will either launch a class action lawsuit or they'll see a massive withdrawal of funds. Well, at the same time, it is not possible to pursue a similar action against a normal bank or credit card company. The legally enforceable protections for your account at JP Morgan Chase or Bank of America or whatever pyramid of suits you chose to give your money to is barely above that of several multi-jurisdictional gray market companies, and in some cases it's worse. Congratulations, everybody.
I hate those arbitration clauses.
Well, great report. Thanks very much for that. That's really cool. Not cool in terms of the story. It's very, very thorough reporting. Really enjoyed it. Right, ransomware, more of it. Oh, look at that little bunny in the picture. Whose is this story? This is really interesting. So there's more ransomware going around, this time in Russia and Ukraine?
That's right. It looks like this one's just a little bit more direct, going towards, the last one in June, it was headed towards hospitals, and it affected a lot of the infrastructure, where this one is like a greater percentage of this go around is the infrastructure, government computers. And it's let's see here. Yeah, it's spreading around Russia and Eastern Europe, countries like Ukraine, and it's been linked to the author from the June attacks. And yeah, this one's just targeting more government systems, and it's just related to those guys. And it's definitely showing like this whole new way that Bitcoin and cyber warfare and countries using these sort of things as geopolitics, and it's definitely a new front line. And this is just the newest weapon out there, and it's out there in Russia and that general area right now. And oh yeah, it was put out from a particular website. I don't have that name in here real quick. Let me just pull it up.
Acnix, have you got any thoughts on this? Rick's getting his link. Is Acnix there?
He's trolling the chat box.
Yeah, yeah, he is. He's in the chat box.
Yeah, I'm in the chat mindset. Oh no, more malware. Yeah.
No more malware.
No,
It's
I said,
bad.
wow, more malware. Yeah.
Oh wow. No.
Okay, so yeah, it was bahmut.com.ua, bahmut.com.ua was the first site to release the malware, and that's so if you've been through there and you're from the Russian East European area, then I would definitely do.
Yeah, don't visit that site. You're not encouraged to visit that site. That's the reason why you didn't put up on the screen or in the description. I don't want to give everyone malware.
Yeah, don't visit that site, people. I'm sorry I didn't specify that first. I was looking through there for a good little time. Please don't go to that URL. Do not.
I was trying to encourage digital Darwinism. You're distorting nature.
Natural selection by geekery. If you're not a geek, you won't survive. Geeks will inherit the earth. Right. What's a mule got to do with it?
I have no idea, but this is a really fucking cool thing. So, the Samourai wallet developers have set up a repo on GitHub for everybody to compile any project out there for either querying blockchain data or relaying transaction data to the network in unconventional means. SMS relay, satellite hookup, radio waves, fax, Bluetooth, NFC, Morse code, like whatever it is. Like it's if you have a procedure to train a pigeon to carry open dimes, put that shit on this repo. And the intent is to get all of these kinds of unconventional means of transmitting data for the network in one place so that people can actually start looking at them, start standardizing them. I know Samourai Wallet in particular is going to look into incorporating anything useful or functional into their wallet directly. But this is some awesome shit that should have happened years ago, folks. Here it is. Let's go. Who can train pigeons?
Yeah, we need to do it so you can do it verbally as well. Just like, say the actual signature down a microphone or down a telephone and then have it encoded at the other end.
Whatever, man. As long as it gets my transaction to a miner or it gets data to me. Let's go. Come on, people.
You need a whisper network. You need to be able to get those, tin cans with a string. You need to be able to get it to work like that. If it doesn't work like that, it's not an anti-fragile network. I don't care what you say. I'd also like to see QR.
It's not a bad idea, Chris, if you could have an encoding for that.
Well, you're basically just saying, probably what you would do is you would convert the hex into some kind of pseudo poetry, right? You would have like a dictionary of words, and then you convert the hex into poetry. And it's not real poetry, folks, in case you don't know, but there are algorithms that you can convert machine readable code, or like, a hash or something, into words, like a bit like a seed for the hardware, for the hierarchical deterministic wallets that you get. So that could be an idea. You could just speak the words to somebody and they could just repeat them, write them down, send them down a chain. You need some kind of checksum. You basically need HTTP for human beings so that there's like, a two-way kind of like confirmation that they got the message. Because it's synchronous, right? TCP is synchronous.
Mm-hmm. There we go, Chris.
TCP for the masses. And also I'd like to see QR codes, because obviously you can make custom QR codes that are bigger message space, and they don't work with all QR code readers, but you can actually make a theoretically more secure hardware wallet, just with a small, like a laptop or something, rip out its Wi-Fi, rip out all the network connections, in fact, rip out all the ports so it's got no IO at all. And then you just use QR codes to communicate backwards and forwards from your phone. And all your phone does is compile the transaction ready for signing. The computer does the signing. It's got the private keys on it. It's air gapped. And then it communicates the signature back to you via a QR code that you scan on your phone. Job done. That's pretty secure.
Hell yeah, man.
So I want to see that shit up there.
Come on, hackers, hack things. Let's go.
Hack it, hack it, hack it. All right, wallet update for Samurai Wallet. Is that right? Segwit. We're getting Segwit.
Bam, bam. Yeah, I finally, I'm going to confess, guys, I finally just moved my first outputs to Segwit when Samurai updated.
Cool. Wow, look at that. Oh, shit, here we go. That's the QR code I'm talking about. They've already done it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, shit, that's brilliant. Oh, what? My heroes.
I love these guys, man.
That's great. That's really cool. All right. We've got fake news up next. Stay tuned. In the meantime, what's our final thoughts? Before we do the silly news, what are we all thinking then?
I'm thinking that Samurai Wallet are like the only dev team working on a wallet that have their head pulled out of their ass at this point. Like what is everybody else doing?
Yeah.
Just on that thought, like I think that whole BGold thing, like it's funny, but I mean it really does show the pressure that this thing can put on you. Like, you know, you're dev in the space and then all of a sudden the limelight's on you and it's time to perform. And I think it's just I don't know, it speaks volumes that the core team has been together and things have been going well for so long. And it's just too much. It's too much. All right.
Okay. Silly news, silly fake news about Amazon accepting Bitcoin. Janine. No, you don't want to cover it. Okay. So
I'll buy it.
This was going around. CoinRun was talking about it on Whalepool. Came out 8 hours ago. Is Cointelegraph, so who the fuck knows? I mean, if it's even could just be complete bullshit. But there are sources, of course, in Silicon Valley who said that Amazon, you know, may include Bitcoin payments into their system. Bitcoin introduction should probably be accepted soon. Upon questioning Amazon, a spokesman replied to the publication in a predictably generic fashion. Amazon opts to include new products or services only when these are useful for our customers. Until that point, we do not engage in rough speculation. So I just think it's all bullshit. What do you think?
I'm not buying it.
We could have egg on our face tomorrow when it actually turns out to be true and Bitcoin is pumping right now. Like it was just going down. And there was no high volume spike either. There wasn't like a big, you know, capitulation candle. And so many people got long further up at like, you know, 5,800, 5,700, because they were all like, oh, you know, get my Bitcoin gold or whatever. And they thought they were going to all-time highs. And now they're all trapped underwater. I was expecting, you know, maybe 5,000, 5,100 before the capitulation. But we've ended up going up a lot sooner. So maybe it's the Amazon news. All right. Stop giving Amazon publicity. Okay, you're right, Fubar. From now, I'm not. That's it. That's all I'm giving them.
I'm not buying it, Chris.
Okay. Why are we whispering?
I don't know.
All right. What should the users do if they want to participate in the show? Where should they go?
They come join us on the Bitcoin Mumble.
Is that creepy? Sounds creepy.
No, man, it's where all the cool kids hang out. We organize troll army skirmish campaigns.
Yeah.
No, it's really boring.
We get paid by AXA, basically, to put out propaganda that favors Blockstream Core. That's what we do.
I get paid in hats.
I've seen them.
Right. You get paid in hats. That is true. You do. That's your reward. But we never see you wearing them because of your anonymity issues. Okay. Oh, good. All good in the hood. Thanks a lot for watching. Is there anything else before we sign out today? Janine.
Can you tell me and James a bedtime story?
Janine, tell him a bedtime story. Come on.
I'm not going to tell a bedtime story. I want you to click on the link that I sent in the thing, the chat.
Both of them?
The second one, probably.
Ooh, are bad people laundering money?
Well, the interesting part is that the UK Treasury released or published a story about a week or two ago now that ranked different things on the a scale of what is most likely to be used in a money laundering scheme. And digital currency, aka Bitcoin, was actually lowest on that list. And guess who's at the top? Banks. Which is why I wanted Chris to...
gosh.
Surprise! That's why I wanted Chris to tell his anecdote about what he learned about money laundering in banks.
Wait, Chris, can you teach me how to money launder? Come on, teach me how to money launder, Chris.
Well, there was a chap on one of the chat rooms, so I won't mention where, and people were sort of talking, comparing notes, saying, well, look, how do I take my profits out of the Bitcoin exchange? I've got a couple of Lambos locked up somewhere in Bittrex, and I need to get them out. Like, how should I do it? Should I, pay him, small payments into my bank? If I do one large payment, are they going to like shut me down and like ask me lots of questions or anything? And this guy just starts saying, well, don't just do it in chunks, because that's called structuring, and they actually know all about that. And if you like put in small amounts over a period of time, they'll just add it all up together, and the algorithm will just trigger. You're better off just like telling them, like just telling them this is going to happen, put the whole amount in there. But it turns out this guy, so he kept saying in the conversation, like, I can't really talk about that because that goes into money laundering territory, right? That was one of the really interesting things. But maybe we'll talk about it in private. And I think this guy works in banking. And I think basically, if you're in banking, you're there so that you can get access to all the protocols and the procedures, so that you are the one that can do the money laundering. Not necessarily, I'm not saying this guy was doing that. I'm just saying that if you work in a bank, you get to know all the idiosyncrasies of the system. You get to know how to play those rules, because it's not algorithmic like Bitcoin. It is human beings, and human beings are frail, and they succumb to greed and all this kind of thing. So if you want to launder money, the best thing to do is go work for a bank. You've got all the power. You actually are at the computer. You can put things through, and there are ways of doing it. It's like, yeah, well, that's kind of money laundering. We could talk about it. There are ways you can do it. There are ways that you can get around it. It's just, I just find it like, I don't know. I feel like the only people that get into banking are just people that they're there so they can play the system. That's why they turn up in the first place. All right, so that was the story.
Wait, so I just asked the bank to help me, and then they launder the money for me?
You just asked the bank, like, look, can you? I know you do this because I heard about it in the news, and HMRC said you're really good at money laundering, right? And just obviously you have to do a bit more subtly about, But
so I just tell him this guy around the block from under the bridge named Frank told me to ask you, right? Just tell him
just go into the bank and leave some cash like near the teller, and just go, I don't know, maybe you can sort me out with an account offshore or something, and just like start like laying down banknotes and just seeing how the teller reacts. Oh yeah, I can actually do that for you. I can set you up like an offshore. We've got loads of offshore shell companies right now doing all kinds of silly business for us, tax evasion, so on. Right.
I can't keep going without laughing.
Cool. James Bond wants to hear more of my sexy voice. Okay, you can. I mean, I'll be around tomorrow, do another show. Chris, are you bearish on Bitcoin? Ask Gugu. No, not really. I mean, maybe after Segwit 2x, I think we might go down, but I was pretty confident that we were going to bounce. I thought maybe 5,100 would be capitulation, but we bounced a bit sooner. So I'm quite happy with this bounce. Currently, Bitcoin is trading at, on Bitfinex, 57.35. So that's a pretty good bounce. Just not the high volume drop that I was really looking for, the capitulation. I still think there are a lot of people that were long from the top. I think they'll want to take some profit very soon. And yeah, that's what I think. But after Segwit 2x, yeah, maybe we will go down. But
wait, so they're
I'm
going to
hoping
take their
10,000.
profit at a loss?
They're going to take their profit at a loss, just like Marty says. Minute Marty, good friend of ours from the old days. You haven't seen Marty in a long time, right? Because he doesn't come on Bitcoin Mumble.
No, actually, I missed the fuck out of him. I haven't seen him since last time he was on.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. He's all right. And he's a lot of fun. So cool. Guys, look, if you want to join us, link is in the description to the chat room. You need the open source free software called called Mumble. And the channel is called Bitcoin Mumble. And there's a room in there called Dragon's Den, which is where we all hang out. And you can take part in the show, come up with stories during the day, maybe help Rick with the image, because poor Rick, he does the image every single day. Maybe he can, collaborate with somebody else as well. And what is left to say is that if you enjoyed what you saw here today, you can hit the like and subscribe. But remember, only if you want to. Bye for now.